Hello and welcome to this very special episode of the Ferraris 10-minute stories, where we're going to talk about my personal idol in the Ferrari world, Luca Cordero de Montezemolo. For those of you who don't know, Luca was the most famous for his stint as Ferrari's chairman and CEO from 1990 to 2010. But there's so much more to this guy, I thought we need to talk about him. Okay, what's not to like about this guy? He's a billionaire. He's a descendant of royalty. He's an Italian playboy who races fast cars and fast yachts. He's the man, okay? Who better to put as the head of a company that embodies all of those things? The pursuit of joy in life, right? And style. He's got all of these things, okay? So how does he come to be in the Ferrari world? Well, in 1971 or 2 or 3 or something, he gets hired as Enzo Ferrari's personal assistant. Very quickly, he gets promoted up the ranks and becomes relatively heavily involved in their racing program for a couple of years, and is credited with some pivotal decisions that ended up leading to successes in the next couple of years, namely the hiring of Niki Lauda and a couple of other things. And so as a result, Ferrari wins a couple of titles in the early 70s. Okay, so then he goes on to bigger and better things. He starts working in the corporate world of Fiat, which is the ownership group of Ferrari at that time, and sort of drifts away from Ferrari involvement. He comes back and forth, but really, the next time he's really involved with Ferrari is 1990 when Enzo dies. So the chairman of Fiat at the time says, you know what, Luca's the man, let's bring him back. So they bring him back, and right away he starts changing the place, okay? But the most famous story about him is one of my favorite stories, so I'm going to tell you. So when you're the chairman of a big badass brand like Ferrari, what do? Well, you buy one of the cars, okay? And so that's what he does. In 1990, he buys himself a 348, and he's cruising around Rome in his 348, and he pulls up at a stoplight, and some dude in a Golf GTI pulls up next to him, okay? And so, of course, you're going to race. So they race, and guess what happens? The guy in the Golf walks him, or at least for the first part of the race, the first 100 yards or so, the Golf is actually getting away from the 348. And that's not going to go down well with anybody who owns a Ferrari, much less the guy who owns a company. But to add insult to injury, the guy in the Golf looks over, grinning, and then recognizes Luca as the chairman of Ferrari. And he's like, hey, Luca, my car's faster. Can you imagine how you would feel? And I think I can imagine how Luca felt, because in his own words, he said he went to the next board meeting and didn't say a thing. He asked his board members and he said, hey, guys, tell me about the 348. So they go on, they say, well, it's got class-leading acceleration, it's got class-leading handling, it's got this, it's got that, it's great, we love it, it tastes great, less filling, best car out there. And he waits for them to finish and he says, guys, the car is shit. His words, not mine. And so for the next 3 or 4 years, he spends much of his personal attention in addition to changing the direction of the company to improve the 348. And what was the outcome? The 355. A personal high water mark in the Ferrari catalog, but everyone will agree that the 355 has many attributes that make it a timeless classic. It's drop dead gorgeous. 5 valves per cylinder. 6-speed manual, 75 extra horsepower from essentially the same engine as the previous 348. Much better handling, etc., etc. Now, admittedly, he had an early 348 and they had known handling defects which were fixed, so maybe that car has been besmirched in ways that are not fair. I'm not here to argue that. I've never driven one, but having owned a 355, I can tell you that car was amazing. And maybe that's why his era of cars have really resonated with me. Just his attention, his priorities were the same as mine. Okay, and look at the cars that he's made. He's under his watch. We get the 550, we get the 360 Stradale, we get the 599 GTO, we get the Enzo, we get the 430 Scuderia, and we get the 458. Now, like it or not, there are some heavy hitters in that list. These are some big names in the Ferrari pantheon of great cars. And he was responsible for these cars. He was responsible for the special car program, where before, Ferrari would here and there release a car that had some, added features, but there was no consistency to it. He comes along and he says, we're making the 355 Challenge. We're making the 360 Stradale. We're making the 430 Scuderia. We're making the 599 GTO. Like it or not, He takes the standard car, which everyone thinks is going to be the great racer car, and actually makes it the great racing car. The focus of losing weight, extra power, more sound, more engagement, all of these things are very clear to anybody who's owned or driven these cars. Now, of that list, unfortunately, I've only ever driven the 430 Scuderia and compared it to this 430 that I have, and I can tell you the difference is very obvious. You can see a review of the 430 Scuderia in one of my other videos if you're interested. But I will tell you that his approach for making these cars really resonated with me, okay? Because he seemed to prioritize the things that I care about. All of the cars under his watch, except for the 458, had manual options, okay? All of them were restricted production. All of them were designed by Pininfarina. Most all of them were drop dead gorgeous, which, you know, you can say that certain Ferraris are beautiful in some lights and some not, but in the Enzo era, there were some cars that maybe at this stage in history are not viewed as favorably as the ones that came after it. Debatable, but my personal opinion, the ones under his watch were some of the best looking cars ever made, okay? Because he prioritized these things. And the other thing that he did was he really curated the brand experience. Somebody asked him one time, he said, "Hey, Luca, how many cars are you going to make this year?" And he said, "One less than what the public wants." Okay, what does that mean? It means that he is going to keep the brand exclusive. He's going to keep you wanting more. And the sign of any great showman who puts out any great product is the last rule in show business: keep them wanting more. And the Ferrari would-be owners of that era, they were always wanting more. They were always on wait lists for this car or that car. And unlike today, where those wait lists are arguably manufactured, in those days they were real. They were just more buyers than cars. And, you know, that was his responsibility. And whether that's been good for the industry or not is debatable, but since I'll never be in the allocation game, it doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is those cars are hard to come by, and when you see them on the street, you take notice, which unfortunately, some of the more modern makes, more modern, you know, special cars that cost a ton of money, but you see 1,000 of them, it kind of dilutes the experience, in my view. Okay, so then what happens in 2010? Well, Ferrari goes corporate, okay? And corporate overseers aren't going to stand by and let you leave profits on the table. They're like, hey, the market can absorb 10,000 cars. Why are we only making 7? He tells them his rationale, and they essentially tell him to take a hike. Sergio Marchionne takes over. Ferrari goes corporate and public, and production starts to rise, and it continues to rise to this day. So, like it or not, the Ferrari of today, post Montezemolo, is a different entity for various reasons. Okay, so in my romanticized view of the guy, he was holding back. He had his finger in the dike, and then they pulled it out, and then the whole dam burst. And the Ferrari experience is probably a little different today than it was back then. Okay, so under his watch, you know, as soon as he goes, they get rid of Pininfarina. They do in-house styling. They start upping the volume. They go twin turbos. They start getting an SUV. They start doing all the things that are potentially important for modern survival of a car company like Ferrari. But at the same time, they still rankle the old school rank and file enthusiasts. Okay, and I would consider myself in that category. But, you know, it is what it is. We won't debate that component. So where do things end off? So he gets pushed out in 2010 and then goes away. But recently, he has resurfaced. He has been hired by McLaren. He is now an advisor on their board, okay? And I, for one, am hopeful, okay? I'm hopeful that McLaren will start making the decisions that he made for Ferrari based on his tutelage. McLaren, give us a freaking manual. Give us a naturally aspirated V12. We know you can make crazy ones. Please give us one. I might even buy it. Please. I mean, in 10 years when it's affordable, or 20 years or 30 years, whatever it is. But at least it'll be on my wish list. I'm hopeful that he's going to exert the same influence he had at Ferrari onto McLaren, because we know that he's a car guy in the truest sense of the word. But in my heart of hearts, I still hope that he comes back to Ferrari. I mean, this guy bleeds red, right? Not papaya. He's an Italian. Let's bring him back to Ferrari. Let's get the manual gearbox back. Let's let him do what he does. Let's let him do the Montezemolo thing. I think it's going to be great at McLaren, and hopefully he's going to come back one day. Thanks for joining me. Like, subscribe, tell me I'm crazy, tell me he sucks, tell me Enzo was the man. I want to hear it all. Thanks for joining. We'll talk to you next time.